Hey guys, make sure to like and subscribe, any support from y'all is appreciated. If you want me to post a specific manga or novel, leave a comment and I'll try my best. If the video is too fast or slow for your liking, then you can adjust it in the right corner of the video. Thank you all for 100 subscribers, I never expected this support. Our next goal is 500 subscribers. What did you say? Gregory once again raised his voice. He didn't even know who's that brat, so what's the point in telling his name? Lumilia, explain what's that Sodayashi man that you said, Ursus said. You may not know it, but I know him too well, Lumilia said, and she paused for a moment before she continued. He's my classmate. He's the top student in Ladro Institute and currently the famous strongest first-year student who rivaled Yanagi Shina's deed when she was still a first-year student. He's your classmate? Ursus looked at Lumilia in the eyes and asked. He was stunned when he heard that man also was a student of Ladro Institute, but what shocked him the most was that Soda was the top student. Yes. Lumilia nodded her head and added, did you know that the Ladro Institute is very protective of its top students? You shouldn't lay your hands on him if you don't want to face the Ladro Institute's wrath. Ladro Institute was well known for supporting its top students. The incident where Yanagi Shina beat the royal prince was still fresh in everyone's mind. No one dared to take revenge on her because they know she had Ladro Institute's full support in her back. As long as she wasn't at fault, she could use Ladro Institute name. That support was really Lumilia's goal in enrolling in the Ladro Institute. She wanted Ladro Institute's support no matter what so that she could attain her freedom. Unfortunately, she didn't even manage to enter the top 10 with her current strength. She tried her best to increase her strength in the past few months, but then she realized that there were tons of stronger people in the whole kingdom and the gap between them was too large. If she could only enter the top 10 ranker, then she would receive the Ladro Institute's attention and protection. And if Soda could really rival Yanagi Shina's deeds, then there's no doubt about it. The Ladro Institute was going to back Soda in case Gregory laid his hands on him. A single noble family like Vidrato family was like an ant to the power of the Ladro Institute. 4 to 5 teachers were enough to bring down his whole family. No, if those all-powerful people came on his door, then he would be gone. Bargain Heavifield, the flame master of the Malosa War. The man who single-handedly pushed back the Malosa army in the outskirt of the desolate woods 20 years ago. Sabrina Londevan, the magic caster of destruction. A woman who graduated from Ladro Institute. She once fought the legendary S-rank adventurer on her own to a standstill. She was famous for her O spell that could take thousands of monsters in an instant. Jess Blueleaf, the man that was called the Blue Flash. He an exiled ocean elf and wandered in the continent. In the chaotic period, he fought a lot of powerful people and became a famous swordsman. In the end, lost to Bargain, and he followed Bargain at that time. Lastly, Azrim, the principal of the Ladro Institute. The Demi who was called to match the god from the gods continent 50 years ago. This Demi was well known in the whole continent of Giza as the Raging White Fox. Ladro Institute was like a factory that nurtured high-quality products in the whole kingdom. That. Gregory opened his eyes widely when he heard her words. Top student of Ladro Institute? Could rival Yanagi Shina's deeds? If all of these were true, then it's impossible to touch Soda without getting himself burned. The scariest part about Ladro Institute wasn't its overall power, but its various connection over the whole kingdom. The Ladro Institute nurtured a lot of students, and some of these students become an influential figure in the whole Hebrei kingdom. Just like the captain of the Royal Guard. That man was extremely powerful and he doted the students of Ladro Institute. If Gregory touched the Ladro Institute's top students, then he would gather the attention of all those scary people. It's not worth getting on the bad side of those people. Are you saying the truth? Ursus asked. He couldn't believe what he heard just now. The top student of the Ladro Institute was an adventurer. He thought that it was impossible for that guy to become a top student if he couldn't focus on his study. If you don't believe me, then you can ask him and check his device, Lumilia said while pointing the device on her wrist that record their information. This device could also track the students' whereabouts so that the Ladro Institute could send force if something bad happened. With this, they would understand that they couldn't touch Soda. In fact, they should curry his favor in case he became a big shot in the future. Ursus and Gregory couldn't say anything. They have no other choice but to believe Lumilia's words. If there's nothing else, I'll go now, father, Lumilia said before she bowed and left the room. Actually, Soda wasn't even in the top 10 ranker of the first year. Brian's rank was even higher than him, but he was recognized as the most powerful first-year student. It was because in the special test he alone dominated the whole test. He fought several rankers alone and still managed to beat them. Even if it wasn't a ranking battle, that feat alone made him acknowledged as the most powerful first-year student, that rivaling Yanagi Shina's deeds. Some of the people in the Ladro Institute were already comparing Soda Ayeshi to Yanagi Shina when she was still a first-year student. Wait, stay here. I've something important to tell you. Ursus stopped Lumilia from leaving. I'll leave now. Gregory glanced at Ursus and said before he stood up. Take care, Lord Gregory, Lumilia said to Gregory in a polite tone. Outside the room, Jusmin, Brianna, and Jane looked at Lumilia with a worried expression. They heard Lord Gregory's loud voice and aura from the outside. They could feel that he was angry at something. After a few seconds, the door opened and Gregory left the room. They all looked at Gregory and saw his face with a frown. They wondered what really happened inside. Soda turned his head and looked in the direction where he felt the outburst of mana. Mana outburst didn't last long as it immediately disappeared. He recalled that's the direction where Lumilia was heading before. It seems that something happened for a moment there. He shook his head and looked at Yuko. He smiled and said, "It's fine now, it will fully recover tomorrow." Mew. Yuko stuck out her tongue and licked his cheeks. Good girl, good girl." Soda smiled as he patted her head. He then heard footsteps behind him. He turned his head and saw a chubby middle-aged man with blonde hair. The middle-aged man stopped walking and looked at Soda. Soda also looked at the man and felt a hint of killing intent, but it immediately vanished. After a few seconds, the middle-aged man averted his head and started walking once again. That man. I'm looking forward to it. Soda smiled while looking at the back of the man. There's no doubt about it. That was killing intent. With that look and aura, Soda could guess that man will make a move tonight. I guess I will trigger another quest tonight. Probably. I'm not sure. Soda rubbed his chin as he muttered. Once again, he heard footsteps behind him. He guessed that it was Lumilia and the other because of the number of footsteps. He turned his head and saw that it was Lumilia and the others. He was right, so he patted Yuko and said, "Let's go, Yuko, let's continue our job." The two followed Lumilia. It was late at night when it's Soda's time to guard Lumilia. Soda was fully armed tonight because he guessed that man he saw this afternoon will make a move. "Soda, are you there?" Lumilia said from inside the room. "Yes, I'm here," Soda replied to her. "Once you go back to the institute, can you keep this a secret from Lin and Nio?" Lumilia said. "I understand, but," Soda said as he looked at the door. He then leaned his back on the door and continued, "Are you sure about this? You're not going back?" I don't know what I should do. Recently my father managed to acquire a bottle of crystal flame bee honey and the other nobles wanted to get a piece of it. They also knew that I'm the target of the nobles from Melosa country. They used this chance to pressure our family to hand the honey. In exchange, they will help us from the problem of the nobles from Melosa country. Lumilia decided to tell him the problem she was facing. Soda lent her his ears as he listened to everything she said. The two of them were leaning back on the door. They were separated by a single piece of metal. Soda looked up at the starry night as the cold breeze of night gently blew on his face. After a while, Soda opened his mouth and said, "You've been hit by reality, huh? If you don't want it then reject it." "But I don't." Lumilia didn't manage to finish her sentence as Soda interrupted her. "You don't have power but you have me here." Soda grinned as he said, "Yuko is also here. Just ask me and I will help you with all of my power. That's the problem with nobles, you're too dependent on your parents. You can't make a choice on your own. You have to at least think about yourself before you follow others." Did I say everything right? I could vaguely remember those words from my old world. Soda thought as he rubbed his chin. Soda understood why there's a lot of nobles visiting this place. It was because they wanted the crystal flame bee honey. The effect of that honey was something that couldn't be compared to the mystical light cherry. A drop of that honey could increase a person's stats by 50 and mana pool by 200. The added stats will decrease by 5 every subsequent use of the crystal flame honey and the mana added will decrease by 10. It means that it could increase a person's every stats by 275 in total. Even Brian would be able to match him if Brian consumed those honey. It could even make a normal person match those lower ranking in the institute. If you really don't want to get married then I suggest you start living on your own. Don't let those things tie you up like a slave. Soda said. Of course I'll help you if you ask me. Can I really live on my own? Lumilia asked. If you have the will, you can do it. Soda replied to her before he stood up and grabbed the handle of the Vajra sword Saya. He said, "Well, we have some visitors now so we can continue our chat later after I take care of this." Lumilia was confused when she heard his words. Soda patted his clothes and he slowly pulled his sword out of its sheath. He then looked at the 10 figures in front of him. All of them were wearing black cloaks and masks. They were also armed with sharp weapons. These people, Soda looked at the people who were wearing black cloaks. He couldn't feel any intention to kill from these people. Maybe they were an expert that could completely hide their bloodl.u.s.t. Or not. If they were an expert then they don't need that much people. 10 people appearing at the same time in front of the door and they deliberately let Soda saw them. Maybe their target wasn't Lumilia at all. That fat man in the afternoon. Soda guessed that it was the fat man that he saw this morning. But why? He tried to recall anything that he did ever since he arrived in this city. So that's how it is. Soda smirked as he rubbed his chin. He guessed that the young noble he beat before was a relative of that fat man. It all makes sense if it's this way. That fat man came here to discuss the marriage, but fiancé didn't manage to come because Sota broke all the bones from his 4 limbs. Then, Lumilia's father knew that one of the adventurers that his daughter hired fitted the description of the man who assaulted the fiancé. While Sota was thinking through things, one of the figures dashed towards him. The figure threw several daggers towards him. Sota looked at it and he simply moved his body sideways to avoid the daggers. "Crush them, Yuko," he said in a low voice. "Roar." Yuko roared loudly when she heard Sota. She dashed towards the group of people wearing black cloaks. Sota glanced at her before he focused his attention on the figure in front of him. The man pulled out 2 swords underneath his cloaks and charged towards Sota. Clang! 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 Sota exchanged blows with the man and realized that this man was weaker than the assassin that attacked them before. He was sure now that these people were the fat man's subordinates. First, if the fat man was the person who sent the assassins to kill Lumilia before, then he would understand that these people were weaker than those assassins. So he wouldn't send a people of this level which was weaker than the previous assassin. But there's something that's bothering him. These people didn't have a tiny bit of blood.u.s.t in their aura. It feels like they were not here to kill him. If so, then why did they come here? Just to beat him? No, there's a missing piece that he couldn't get to complete this puzzle. Agility boost, strength boost, cat speed, and triple muscle strengthening. Sota used all of his buff spells and combat arts that could temporarily increase his stats for a short amount of time. I will subdue them. Sota decided to not kill them so that he could get more information out of them. They were not a professional assassin, so they wouldn't be able to endure his interrogation. The figure in front of him quickly waved his swords in left and right. Swoosh. Sota quickly took a step back and found that the wall was just behind him. Since there's no time to dodge, Sota used his sword to block the attack on his right side. He then gathered his mana on his left hand and caught the sword with his bare hand. The man stopped for a moment when he saw what Sota did. Sota grinned before he lifted up his feet and kicked the stomach of the man. Bang! The man flew a few meters away before he crashed on the ground. Sota could coat a part of his body with his mana to strengthen it. He could do this with his level 3, mana manipulation. He was about to dash towards the man once again when he noticed that something's wrong. There were 10 people in total that appeared here, but only 1 person attacked him. Sota moved his eyes and found that the remaining 9 people were fighting Yuko alone. He frowned and Wen saw it, but he decided to watch it. It will be a good chance to give Yuko some battle experience in fighting humans and demis. Sota turned his head towards the man that he knocked out only to find that man was gone. Suddenly, a black figure flashed behind him with 2 sharp swords in his hands. The figure was about to slash his sword when shadows burst out of the ground. It was so fast that it bound the figure in an instant. Sota turned his head and looked at the figure. "Stay here for a while," he said as the shadows covered the figure's mouth. Sota shifted his attention to Yuko and the remaining 9 people. Lumilia heard a sound of fighting coming from outside. She was worried about Sota, so she opened the door and saw that Sota was sitting on the ground while watching Yuko fight 9 unknown people. What are you doing, Sota?" Lumilia opened her mouth and asked. She then noticed the man beside Sota. The man was tightly bound by several shadows. There were several blood holes on his body and it looks like some of his bones were broken. The man's nails were plucked out and scattered on the ground. The skin on the leg of the man was taken off as blood was flowing out of it. Lumilia opened her mouth widely when she saw such a gore scene. "Shh." Sota looked at her and placed his finger in front of his lips. "Come here, I'll tell you what happened." Lumilia nodded her head and she walked beside Sota. She was disturbed by the scene beside Sota. Sota glanced at her and he noticed that she was bothered by the sights beside him, so he waved his hand and several shadows emerged from the ground. The shadows covered the man's whole body so the Lumilia couldn't see this sight anymore. Sota looked around and guessed that the patrolling knights will arrive in this area after a few minutes. He already memorized the time where the knights were patrolling, so these people too. Why don't you help Yuko? Lumilia asked as she lifted up her head and looked at Yuko, who was fighting 9 people at the same time. That's a good question. The answer to that is I wanted her to gain some experience in fighting humans. I will let it be and only finish it when the knights are going to arrive, Sota said as he watched the battle. Yuko already took several cuts on her body. The people that attacked them weren't as powerful as the assassins before, so it's not a problem to her. This morning he overreacted when some random noble guy cut Yuko's side, but now Yuko has several cuts on her body. Sota didn't even do anything. He just continued watching her fight. Well, for him the incident this morning was different from here. They were relaxing this morning and those guys disturbed them, so it's natural to punish them. Right now, it's training time. It's natural to receive wounds and injuries when you're in a battle. I'll tell you something before the patrolling knights arrived. Sota paused for a moment before he continued. These people are from the Vedredo family. Gregory, that fat man, sent these people to kill Yuko. They knew that they couldn't kill me because of the Ladro Institute behind me, that's why they shifted their attention to Yuko. What? Lumilia was stunned when she heard Soda's words. To think that all the warning she said was in vain. Gregory still dared to trouble Soda despite knowing that he had Ladro Institute in his back. You know, I'm hypocrite. I'm not a saint. Soda's tone turned colder. The atmosphere around him started to change. He slowly opened his mouth and said, I've decided, I will kill them all. Gregory greatly underestimated him and Yuko. He thought that these people were enough to hold him off and kill Yuko. He should have at least brought someone who was at the level of the assassin before. I will get you back for this. I will collect your soul and you will become my nutrition. Soda thought as he grinned. He then stood up and patted his clothes. The patrolling knights will arrive here soon, so Soda decided to finish this immediately. That's enough, Yuko, Soda said in a loud voice, and it gathered the attention of the people who were wearing black cloaks. The ground beneath Soda's feet immediately turned into shadows. The shadows spread quickly and it emerged from the ground. Swoosh. The people who were wearing black cloaks were caught off guard. Soda followed it up by casting Shadow Spike. It pierced their bodies like a piece of paper. He knew that they were still alive, so he used Crimson Moon skill to completely kill them. It was at this moment when he heard the system prompts in his head. Come here. He grabbed one of the people on the neck. This person was the only one he left alive. Soda didn't need to know the truth from this man, as he already interrogated the individual that he killed before. He only needed the knowledge of this man. He's the witness that Gregory sent these people after him. So when he attacked someone from the Vedredo family, he had a good reason for it. Just fall asleep, Soda said as he knocked out the man. He will protect this person and used him to pressure the Vedredo family. He then heard a voice behind him. I didn't think that he will send out his people to attack despite all the things that I've said to him, Lumilia said as she looked at the man that was in Soda's arms. Can you tell me more about that? Soda looked at her and asked. It seems that she's the reason why the Vedredo family knew about him being a student of the Ladro Institute. Okay. Lumilia nodded at him and she began to narrate what happened in the meeting room. Soda just listened to her story until the patrolling knights arrived in the scene. I see. I appreciate your help, Soda said as he thanked her. He and Lumilia turned their heads when they heard several footsteps. They found that some of the knights approached them. The knights asked Soda various questions and Soda cooperated with them. While these knights were asking Soda some questions, some of the knights were cleaning the scene. The knights took the man from him. Soda didn't say anything as he let them took the man. He already has a plan to take back that man before he departed. Soda shook his head and looked at Yuko. Come here, Yuko. Yuko ran towards him when he mentioned her name. She stuck out her tongue and licked his cheeks. Good job, that's my girl. Soda hugged her in return and used the light heal spell to close some of her wounds. Lumilia looks like she wanted to say something. Soda turned his head to the side to look at Lumilia. He smiled and asked, what is it? Have you made your detch? Soda didn't manage to complete his sentence as Yuko moved her huge body and blocked his vision. Oi! Yuko, we're talking here. Just sit here for a while. Soda looked at Yuko and said while pointing at his side. Mew. Yuko dropped her shoulders when Soda raised his voice. She quietly sat at the spot that Soda pointed. Don't worry, I will buy you a bunch of fruits that you want later. Soda gently smiled as he patted her head. Soda. Lumilia looked at Soda with a serious expression. It seems that she finally decided what she should do. Soda looked at her. He just simply looked at her and didn't say anything. He just waited for what she was about to say. I finally realized it. I don't want to be bound by my family, but I can't do anything on my own. Please, Soda, lend me your strength, Lumilia said as she raised her voice. Soda waved his hand and used his mana so that her voice couldn't travel far in the knight's area. Very well, I'll help you to the best of my ability, Soda said as his mouth curved into a grin. At the same time, he heard a familiar sound in his mind. Ding. Chain quest triggered. Lumilia. Quest 1, leave the Osver's territory within an hour. Reward, 1000 exp, 2 free attribute points, and 1 skill point. Soda smiled inwardly when he found that the quest he triggered this time was a chain quest. To think that this was Lumilia's chain quest. If he completed all the quest in chain quest, then he would earn a high amount of skill points and free attribute points. The only problem was the final quest of the chain quest. It was harder than all the quests that he took since he arrived here in this world. The chain quest usually consisted of 3 quests, but some of the chain quests have more than 10 quests in it. Soda looked at Lumilia and said, prepare yourself immediately. We will leave this place right now. Since the quest said that they should leave this place within 1 hour, something will happen in this place if they don't leave. Right now? Lumilia was shocked when she heard that Soda already planned to leave this place right now. Yeah, I thought you've resolved yourself? Soda said while looking at her eyes. Lumilia took a deep breath and she nodded her head at Soda. Her eyes were burning in determination. Go back to your room and change your clothes, Sota said as he pointed at her room. Lumilia looked down at her clothes and found that she was in her pajamas. She hurriedly went back to her room to change her room. Sota looked at her back and shook his head. He then turned his head sideways and found that the Gale group was walking towards his direction in haste. What happened here, Sota? Brianna asked him as she looked around the place. I've heard that some people attack you, Tyder said as he looked in a direction where the knights were cleaning a pool of blood on the ground. They were in their room when they heard the knights were talking about this incident, so they immediately came here to check if everything's alright. Yeah, some people attack us but they were too weak to kill me. Sota nodded at Brianna and said. He looked at them with a serious expression and said, we'll leave this place. Can you tell us the reason why? Brianna asked him. It's not a problem for me, Sota said as he looked around and tried to sense if there's someone eavesdropping on them. When he found none he began to talk in a low voice. Lumilia came here to annul her engagement but she couldn't do so because of the current situation of the family. A lot of nobles are eyeing the Osphairs family, including those from the Melosa country. Lumilia decided to flee from her engagement from the young master of the Vedredo family. Since she was really the target of the nobles from Melosa country, if she left her family then those nobles will focus on her. It took her all of her wills before she managed to resolve herself. She decided to trust her classmate, Sota Ayeshi, the only one who was willing to help her in this whole city. Sota told them everything that he knew. Then, all we have to do is to safely escort her back to Ledros City to complete her quest? Tyder asked. Yeah, that's the gist of it. Sota nodded at him. He then recalled something. Also, don't worry about the payment. If Lumilia doesn't have any money in her pocket, then I will be the one that will pay all of you. You're a good classmate, Sota, Tyder said as he patted Sota's back. Not everyone will do anything for their classmates. Brianna smiled and said. I wonder about that. At least I know one person that will help anyone in need without hesitation. Sota replied to them. The news traveled fast and Gregory immediately knew that his plan failed. Damn. I've greatly underestimated that brat, Gregory said angrily as he smashed his table into pieces. Since he knew that Sota was the strongest first-year student, he thought that his power level was just slightly stronger than the people he sent. That's also the reason why he sent 10 people just to get rid of that bear. He never thought that Sota's strength was higher than he could imagine. Lord, one of the people we sent is still alive. What should we do? Gregory's assistant asked him. Kill him. We don't want to let anyone know about our involvement in this or else we would see the power of Ladro Institute, Gregory said. Then he added, that institute is full of monsters that we can't afford to fight. Sota looked in the sky and said, this will be a long night. Sota, don't tell me. You like Miss Lumilia, Tyder said as he looked at Sota with wide eyes. Brianna, Jane, John, and Tim turned their head and looked at Sota as if they wanted to know if it's true. Sota sighed and said, I wonder about that. But who knows what will happen in the future. He then patted Yuko's head and said, I currently don't have someone like except for Yuko. That's too bad. I really thought that you have. Tyder dropped his shoulders. Really, if you're already like this to a girl who's just your classmate, I wonder what can you do if you found someone that you like, Jane said to him. I don't know about that. But if I'll use Yuko as a reference then I'm prepared to annihilate the Adventurers Guild, so that those hunters wouldn't give Yuko some trouble. Sota said to them. You're really something. Not everyone can say the same words as you do. Brianna smiled wryly and said, it's easy to say, hard to do. I could even say that I could even kill those gods for Yuko. Sota said and he shook his head. Well, let's prepare now. I've still got something to so wait Lumilia here. He didn't even let the Gale group question him as he already started running. Yuko. Stay here for a while. Sota left those words before he vanished into thin air. Brianna, Tyder, Jane, and the rest of the Gale group could only stare at the place where Sota disappeared. Sota was hiding in the bushes. He tracked the footprint of the knights and it led him in the underground base of the Osphairs mansion. Underground? I guess that all the nobles' mansion has an underground base. Sota muttered as he rubbed his chin. All the intruders that they caught were placed in the boss.e.m.e.nt. They didn't hand it in the hands of the city guards at all. I only have 1 hour to leave this place, so I will take back that man quickly, Sota said. He then looked around and only saw 2 knights guarding the boss.e.m.e.nt. He took a deep breath and silently clenched his fists. The 2 knights were talking to each other. They don't have any idea that Sota was going to attack them. Suddenly, shadows burst out of the ground and strangled their bodies. What the knights were about to shout when the shadows covered their mouths and eyes. Sota did this so that they wouldn't know that he attacked them. Swoosh. Sota jumped out of the bushes and he charged straight to the 2 knights. He gathered his mana in both of his fists and he swiftly knocked out the 2 knights. Bang. Bang. The shadows disappeared and the 2 knights fell down on the ground. Sleep well. Sota looked down at the 2 unconscious knights and said before he went down in the boss.e.m.e.nt. He wouldn't kill these knights because there's no enmity between him and the Osver's family. Also, these people were Osver's family's knights. He wouldn't kill them for no reason because he doesn't want Lumilia knew that he was killing the knights of their family. It would leave a bad impression on her. Sota walked downstairs until he found a corridor that has jails on each side. At the end of the corridor, he saw the knights were locking up the man inside a jail. Sota bent his knees and charged towards the knights while casting Shadow Bind, at the same time. Swoosh. Who the hell are you? One of the knights asked with an angry expression as Sota arrived in front of him. Sota delivered a powerful blow on his stomach, directly knocking him on the wall. Bang. Sota then lifted up his feet and kicked the jaw of the other knight. Bang. The knight directly lost his consciousness when Sota kicked his jaw. He fell on the ground as his armor made a loud metallic sound. It's done, Sota said, and he looked at the unconscious man who was wearing a black cloak. He was about to carry him when he heard an ear-piercing sound coming from behind. Xianxia. He quickly coated his body using his mana and went inside the jail. A powerful gust of wind passed by in the corridor and crashed in the wall. Boom. It caused a small explosion as the wall got destroyed and the debris of rocks shot up. Ah, this skill is really too loud. Sota heard a voice echoed in the corridor. He checked the unconscious man and carried the man in one hand. He then grabbed the handle of the Vajra sword Saya, before he pulled it out. Tack. As soon as he stepped out, the ground turned black and it spread immediately in the whole area. Several shadows that looked like tentacles emerged from the ground. Go. Sota muttered as he looked at the man who was wearing silver armor. This man was also a knight of the Osver's family, but he was stronger than the level of the normal knights. This is cheating, right? I don't have enough space to avoid those things. The knight smiled wryly while looking at the countless shadows around Sota. He then looked at Sota's face and said, but still, to think that you're the one behind this is out of my expectations. You know, I'm the one who caught this guy, but why you knights are acting like you're the one who caught him, Sota said as he lifted the man in his hand. He showed it to the man and added, well, let's finish this. The shadows around Sota stretched out and went straight towards the knight. Swoosh. Swoosh. The knight knew that he was at a disadvantage if he's going to fight Sota in the boss.e.m.e.nt, so he decided to retreat towards the surface. Swoosh. Sota noticed that the knight went on the surface. That knight knew that there's nothing good that will happen if he fought Sota here in the boss.e.m.e.nt. Sota placed back the Vajra sword in its sheath. He then looked up in the ceiling before he lifted up his hand. He made a grabbing motion in the air as his mana flared up. On the surface, the knight noticed that something was wrong. He bent his knees and quickly jumped in the air. After a few seconds, several shadow spikes burst out of the ground. If I didn't notice it, then that spikes are currently drilling inside my body, the knight said with a sigh while looking at the shadow spikes. If I'm not wrong, he's just a D rank adventurer, but the power he showed could be compared to those who are at C rank. He landed on the ground and he tightened his grip on his sword. He looked at the path towards the boss.e.m.e.nt and heard loud footsteps. He's here. The knight smiled wryly as he used several combat arts that could temporarily increase his strength. Suddenly, he opened his eyes widely and once again jumped in the air as several shadow spikes burst out of the ground. He then saw tentacles like shadows stretched out towards him with high speed. Swoosh. Swoosh. The knight waved the sword in his hand while using combat arts. Threefold slash. What? The knight was shocked when he saw that he didn't manage to cut the shadows in half. He only managed to push it away from him. This guy really has the power of a C rank adventurer despite having his rank lower than that. He thought. D rank adventurers were already called veterans. Their powers were already decent enough to do some difficult quest. C rank was quite sought in the adventurers guild because of their power level. They could handle those monsters that were going to form their monster orb. In other words, they could fight the monsters that undergo first and second evolution. B rank was a powerful adventurer. Some of the B rank adventurers joined the elite group of adventurers guild called hunters. They were powerful enough to match the monster that has a monster orb. The knight carefully landed on the spikes while tightly gripping his sword, and then he saw a ball of shadow heading towards him. Swoosh. He shifted his body to the side and the ball of shadow passed beside him. Suddenly, a sword pierced through his body. Ugh! He spat a mouthful of blood as he looked down at the sword on his chest. He then turned his head and saw Sota grinning behind him. How? Ah, it's really good if your opponent didn't know the effect of your spell. Sota beamed a bright smile as he slowly pulled out the Vajra sword on the knight's chest. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I don't want Lumilia to hate me after all. He then proceeded to smash the nape of the knight using the handle of the sword. It knocked down the man and Sota used light heal to stop the bleeding. Okay, let's go now, Sota said before he disappeared. Sota arrived in front of Lumilia's room and saw that she already finished her preparation. Who's that man, Sota? Brianna asked him while looking at the unconscious man that he was carrying. This? Soda lifted up the man and said, "This man is one of the people who attack us. The one behind that attack is probably going to send some people to silence this man, so I'm going to protect him as I wanted him alive." "So that's how it is." Brianna nodded at his explanation. She knew that if Soda wanted to open the assassination to the public, he needed at least some evidence, and this man was the proof of it. As long as this man was still alive, there's some value to him. Soda turned his head to John and said, "Can you hold him until we leave this city?" "Okay, leave him to me." John nodded at him and took the man from Soda. He took out a rope from his bag and tied the man so that even if the man woke up, he wouldn't be able to give them some troubles. Probably the man too would realize that his lord was going to dispose him when he woke up. The man knew his lord well more than the rest of them. "Good, let's go now." Soda nodded and said to them. The Gale group nodded at him. They were already prepared to leave this city with him. "But what about Jusman and Fred?" Lumilia asked him. She was concerned about her maid and butler the most in this kind of situation. "It's better if they don't know our plan. If your father knew that those two cooperate in our plan, then there's no doubt that your father would punish them." Soda explained to her what's better for her maid and butler. "You don't want to lose their job, right?" With him saying all of this, Lumilia couldn't help but agree to him. She understood that Soda was right and she doesn't want to implicate those two in what she was going to do. "Follow me, we're leaving through the main gate," Soda said as he started to walk. They couldn't jump through the wall because of Yuko, so Soda decided to leave through the main gate. The Gale group and Lumilia nodded at him. They followed behind him. After walking for a few minutes, the group arrived in front of the main gate. They haven't met any patrolling knights in their way because Soda already memorized the path they were taking in their duty, so the group arrived smoothly in front of the main gate. Currently, the group was hiding in the bushes looking at the 6 knights which were guarding the gate. Normally, only 4 knights were guarding this gate, but due to the attack they slightly tightened their defense. "Let's go. We'll talk to them first. If we can't, then we'll take them down." Soda looked at them and said. He carefully explained his plan to them. If they fail to talk to the knights, then they'll break through by force. Soda, Yuko, and the Gale group will take the knights. Soda could leave one of the knights, one each member of the Gale group, because he knew that they were not C-rank adventurers for nothing. Even if the level of these knights was higher, Soda trusted them to take care of it. After all, they were not going to become a C-rank adventurers if they were weak. "Okay, John will stay with Lumilia and the man," Soda said to them. "I understand." John nodded at him. "Good, let's go now," Soda said as he stood up and approached the main gate. Lumilia and the rest of the Gale group simply followed him. The knights blocked their way. One of the knights have opened his mouth and said, "Young miss, we couldn't let you leave the mansion because there's a possibility that some people will attack you once again." "I have my guards with me, there's no need to worry about me," Lumilia said to the knights. "We will not let you pass here, young miss. We can't afford to trust them to protect you with their life," one of the knights said. "Why? Is that my father's order?" Lumilia asked the knight. "Yes, young miss, please forgive us." The knights bowed their heads and said. When they looked down, they saw that the whole ground was black. Even if the light shone on it, it was still black. What's this?" The knights were confused, and then they saw something moving on the black ground. Several shadows burst out of the ground and bound their limbs immediately. Bang! As soon as the shadows bound them, Soda swiftly chopped the nape of the knight. He instantly knocked out a knight within a second. Brianna and the rest of the Gale group quickly moved their bodies and knocked out the knights one by one. Bang! 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 One by one, the knights fell down on the ground without consciousness. Soda controlled the shadows so that their armor wouldn't cause a loud sound when it hit the ground. "This was easier than I thought," Tyder said as he wiped the sweat on his forehead. "Yeah, it's because they lowered their guard, that's why they couldn't react when I casted my spell," Soda said to Tyder. He then turned around and waved his hand. Swoosh! Swoosh! Several shadows burst out of the ground and it headed towards the direction of the tree on the side of the road. Swoosh! Swoosh! 3 daggers flew towards Soda's direction at high speed. Soda controlled some of the shadows and it blocked the daggers. He squinted his eyes and saw a figure flew in the sky and vanished. He managed to escape, Soda muttered, and he looked at the shadow-like tentacles that went towards that unknown person. He noticed that the shadow was sliced into tiny particles. "Who the hell is that?" Tyder commented while looking at the direction where the unknown person disappeared. "That one is powerful," Tim said. In that exchange, he managed to see a bit of that unknown person's strength. He detected that person's magic power was 2 times stronger than his magic power. Yeah, but he understood that he couldn't fight us on his own. That's why he decided to retreat. Soda nodded at Tim's words and said. He then looked at the 3 daggers that pierced his shadows. Blue-grade weapon? That person could throw away a weapon of this caliber easily. Soda thought as he pulled out the daggers. He checked these daggers and didn't find anything wrong, so he decided to keep it for himself. The shadows around him started to dissipate into the thin air as Sota cancelled his spell. A level 10 spell was really useful. A spell for binding could use for protecting himself. At level 10, he could control all the shadow-like tentacles that he made like his own body. It was easy to use it more than the other spells that he had in his arsenal. Sota shook his head and said, "Let's not worry about that. We should go now." "You're right, Sota." Tider nodded at him. "Tim and Tider, you should go now. Hurry up, fetch some carriage," Brianna said as she looked at her two teammates. "Okay, we got it." Tider and Tim nodded at her before they started to run. Tider and Tim were going to fetch a carriage for them while Sota and the rest were going to check if someone was following them. Sota was sure that right now Lumilia's father was going to receive the news about her running away from the mansion. Of course, he knew that Lumilia's father wouldn't let her leave this place easily. After all, that fiancé of hers and father-in-law was also here in this city. He wouldn't want to lose face. That thing was what those nobles value the most. Sota was planning to use Lumilia as bait while those two prepared what they need to leave the city. "Let's go now." Sota looked at Lumilia and the rest before he said, "Let's do this." Brianna, Jane, and John nodded strongly. They were determined to help Lumilia in her problems. Also, Sota promised them a huge amount of rewards if they help her. Lumilia was oblivious to these things. She didn't know that Sota already promised to reward the Gale group if she somehow couldn't give them money. Sota glanced at her and noticed that she was nervous. Her hands were trembling non-stop and it was pretty noticeable. "Worried about it?" Sota looked at her in the eyes and said, "Why yes," Lumilia replied to him. "Is this your first time going against your family's decision?" Sota asked her in a serious tone. "NN." Lumilia simply nodded her head. Sota smiled and said, "Don't worry about it, everything will be alright." He then patted her shoulder and added, "The class rep I knew was always composed and strict, not this nervous and girly type." Lumilia started at his back as his words resonated in her head. She then took a deep breath to calm herself. "Okay, let's do this." Ursus was sitting in his office while looking outside through the window. Someone really dared to send an assassin in my territory," he muttered as he tapped his finger on the table in front of him. "I needed to know who is it as soon as possible." "My lord." Suddenly, his assistant called him in a hurried tone. Ursus frowned as he turned his head and looked at his assistant. "What is it?" he asked. Young Miss left the mansion forcefully. They even brought the captured man with them. The assistant carefully explained to Ursus what really happened. That child left the mansion at this time of crisis. Ursus couldn't believe what he heard this time. Lumilia just left the mansion when there were people that were trying to kill her. Wait. Something is wrong here. Ursus stopped and realized something. He looked at his assistant and asked, "You said that they brought the captured man with them, right?" "Yes, my lord." The assistant replied to him. "Then, why would they bring that man with them?" Ursus tried to think of a reason why they brought that man with them. He thought that maybe they already knew who sent those people. There's a large possibility of that, but it still didn't answer the question of why would they leave the mansion. While Ursus was thinking through things, someone knocked on the door. Knock. Knock. Ursus looked at the door and his assistant walked towards it. After checking the identity of the person, the assistant turned towards Ursus and said, "My lord, Lord Gregory's subordinate is here and is requesting an audience." "Gregory?" Ursus shook his head and replied, "I'll allow it. Let him in." "I understand, my lord." The assistant bowed his head and grabbed the handle of the door. He slowly opened it and a man wearing a silver plate armor under the dark brown hooded robe entered the room. "Why are you here, Jesli?" Ursus asked the man named Jesli. He knew that Jesli was Gregory's direct subordinate. "Lord Ursus, here." Jesli bowed and he took out a piece of yellow paper from his robe and placed it on top of the table. Talisman. Long-distance sound transmission. Ursus recognized that the piece of yellow paper was a talisman for long-distance communication. He waved his hand and poured his mana in the talisman. The talisman emitted a yellow light indicating that Ursus activated it. Ursus opened his mouth and said, "Gregory, what are you planning to do? I've heard that your daughter left your mansion. I only wanted to say that I can help you in finding your daughter." Gregory's voice sounded through the talisman. His voice seems that he found this situation amusing. How did he know about it? It's only been a minute since I've received the news about it. Ursus thought when he heard Gregory's words. He decided to keep this about himself. "How about it? If you agree to it I will help you, since your daughter is the fiancée of my son," Gregory said through the talisman. "Okay, I'll allow you." Ursus nodded his head as he agreed to Gregory. "Thanks, I'll quickly immobilize my troops and search for them in the whole city. Also, you can keep the talisman so that I can easily report to you if I found something," Gregory said before the light in the talisman vanished. It indicates the connection between the two talismans vanished. "Good day, Lord Ursus. I'll go now." Jesli bowed his head and left the room. After Jesli left, the assistant looked at Ursus and asked, "My lord, why did you agree to him?" "I'll go with him for now. We will send people to track my daughter but also Gregory's subordinate. I wanted to know what he's planning, Ursus said as he tapped his finger in the table and looked at the talisman. He knew that Gregory wanted to marry his son to Lumilia because Gregory wanted to get a piece of that crystal flame honey. That honey was too valuable and he wanted to get on Ursus's good book. I will see it later if he's planning something, Ursus muttered in a low voice. My lord, I could only think of one reason why Lord Gregory is going to help us. The assistant opened his mouth and said. Ursus looked at him and asked, and what is it? I think it's because of that adventurer that beat his son. The assistant replied to him. What the that man? He's planning to do that to a top student of the Ladro Institute. Ursus realized it as well. He knew that Gregory was not a man to let bygones be bygones. Gregory, if you're really planning to take him out, then I wonder where did you get the guts to do so? That institute wasn't the most famous institute in the whole Hebraic kingdom for nothing. All the teachers have at least have a record of killing more than one monster that has a monster orb. That's the prerequisite requirement for becoming a teacher of Ladro Institute. The weakest teacher there was as strong as a B-rank adventurer. There's no point in getting in the bad terms with that institute. While Titor and Tim were fetching a carriage, Soda and the rest managed to leave the Osfair's mansion smoothly. Soda asked Brianna and John to rent a room in a random inn. After that, Soda bought a huge black robe and used it to cover Yuko's huge body. He let Yuko hide in the bushes at the side of the road while Soda, Jane, and Lumilia went inside the room that Brianna and John rented through the window. They didn't let anyone see Lumilia. Also, Soda didn't let anyone saw Yuko hide in the bushes because it would reveal their identity. He knew that the knights would just need to ask someone if they saw a huge bear and they would instantly locate their place. Why would Soda bother himself in going inside the room through the window? It was because even if the knights asked the owner of the inn, the owner only knew that 2 people were inside that room. Also, the owner wouldn't forget that John and Brianna was a man and woman, so they would misunderstand what they were doing inside the room. But Soda knew that all of this wasn't enough. This plan could only buy him a few minutes as he knew that his plan was full of holes. But this was the only thing that he could think right now in this situation. We'll leave this place soon. Soda looked at them and said, yeah, we'll wait until Titor and Tim get a carriage. Brianna nodded at him. I just hope they complete their task as soon as possible, Soda said. He then stood up from his seat and looked at the window. Lumilia looked at him and she opened her mouth. What about Yuko? She asked. Her? She's okay for now, Soda replied to her. He lifted up his hand and opened the window. I'll check the things outside for a while, so wait for me here, he said before he jumped outside through the window. Swoosh. Soda went on the rooftop of the inn and looked around the vicinity. He saw the Adventurers Guild building. Soda's figure vanished and reappeared in the next house before he once again disappeared. After a few seconds, he was on the top of the Adventurers Guild building. This building was the tallest in the area, so he could clearly saw the whole place. He frowned and saw a group of knights were asking the people around this place if they saw them. He then heard a familiar sound in his mind. Ding. Quest 1 completed. You've received 1000 exp, 2 free attribute points, and 1 skill point. Quest 2 unlocked. Lumilia. Quest 2. Defend against the elite knights of the Osfair's family and Vedredo family. Rewards, 20,000 exp, 7 free attribute points, and 5 skill points. Soda's brows knitted together while reading the Quest 2 of Lumilia's chain quest. Elite Knight? This is going to be a problem, Soda said in a low voice. He knew that an elite knight was a powerful knight at the level of a C-rank adventurer. If it's one elite knight, then it's not a problem for him, but to think that a group of elite from the 2 noble families were going to hunt them down. So that's why this quest had the reward of 5 skill points. Soda nodded to himself and understand that fighting elite knights from the 2 noble families was worth 5 skill points. And this is just the Quest 2. Then I wonder if those family head will make a move in person in Quest 3. Soda squinted his eyes and he looked up in the sky. The sky was clear and he could clearly saw the shape of the moon. Defend? Then, they were going to attack Soda's group. If that's the case, Soda will initiate the attack first. After a few moments, he smirked and he stood up. Okay, let this city become the battlefield. You people wanted to fight. Me too, I wanted to fight stronger people that could give me high rewards. Boom. His magic power flared up to the peak and it shook the entire building. Every people in the area noticed the outburst of his mana. They looked up and saw him. Come, brave knights of the Osfair's and Vedredo family. Show me what you've got and let me complete my quest so that I could get that 5 skill points. He thought as his hands trembled in excitement. Soda opened his arms widely and grinned while looking down at the masses below him. Let the festival begin. Swoosh. Swoosh. The roof beneath Soda's feet turned into black and it spread quickly. Several tentacle-like shadows burst out of the ground. Soda decided to not wait for the knights to attack them. He will be the one to initiate it. Soda grinned and several tentacle-like shadows emerged from the ground. All the people in the area noticed the spike of his mana, including Lumilia, Brianna, John, and Jane. They opened the window and looked outside. They saw Soda on top of the Adventurers Guild with a grin on his face while looking down on the masses. Around him were several shadows that were moving slowly. What the hell is he doing? Brianna shouted, and she looked around only to find that the knights were focused on Soda. She frowned and turned to Lumilia. Miss Osfairs, we're going to help Soda, so stay here for a while. She then looked at John and Jane. Let's go, you two. Brianna then jumped through the window and the two followed her. Lumilia sighed and looked around the room. The unconscious man that Soda took was still here. She decided that she'll guard this man until Soda and the rest finished what they were doing. Yuko, who was hiding in the bushes, lifted up her head when she felt her owner's magic power. She wouldn't forget this magical signature. It was from the one and only master of hers, Mew. She thought that it was the signal to come to where her owner is. She slowly moved her limbs and went out of the bushes. She then looked at the direction where she felt Soda's magic power before she ran towards it at full speed. Soda gathered the attention of every people in the area, including those knights from the two noble families. Of course, they recognized Soda's face and looks. He was one of the adventurers that Lumilia hired. What the hell is that boy doing up there? Is there some show here? I don't know, but I heard he mentioned festival starting today. I don't know, but he looks suspicious. Yeah, and the thing is, he's standing on top of the Adventurers Guild. The people started murmuring to each other about Soda. They talked about all kinds of things they could think of regarding Soda. Soda slowly opened his mouth and said, "Go, we'll create a party right now." Swoosh. 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 The shadows around him flew straight towards every knight in the area. Everyone was shocked when they saw Soda launched an attack against several people. Bang. 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 The knights managed to repel his shadows using their sword, but some of the knights got caught up. Break, Soda said as he closed his palm, and the shadows around the knights tightened. It crushed the bones in their arms and legs. Crack. A bone cracking sound echoed in the whole area. The whole area was silent as the people were shocked when they saw what did Soda do to those knights that he caught. After a few seconds, a woman screamed and ran away from the scene while holding her head. Ah! Help! Her scream became the trigger that snapped everyone out of their daze. They started to panic as everyone ran in all directions with hurried footsteps. These are just ordinary knights. Where are the elite knights? Soda muttered while looking at the knights below him. The thing was that these knights were from the Osfairs family. That's why he couldn't kill them. He didn't have any plan to kill a knight from Lumilia's family. He would only knock them out or injure them to the point that they wouldn't be able to fight him again. Well, either way, the wounds that he gave them could be healed using a tier 2 healing spell. Soda bent his knees and flew towards the west using air walk. He was absolutely calm right now as he got carried away and started a fight before the Adventurers Guild. He didn't want to bother those folks in case the branch guild master appeared. As long as he didn't bother the Adventurers Guild, it would be fine even if he rampaged throughout the city. He didn't want to be demoted to E rank. Also, he was sure that the Grippine City's adventurers already knew him because he was quite a famous adventurer right at the moment. A demi with red fur bear. So he thought that they would give him some space while doing a quest here in this city. By giving him space means that they wouldn't bother him. He's trying to escape. One of the knights shouted while looking at Soda. Follow him. Don't let him escape. The knights followed Soda, but some of them stay in this place to help their fallen comrades. Soda glanced at them and he didn't increase his speed so that they could catch up to him. He ran until he was 500 meters away from the inn that he rented. On his way, the knights that were following him increased in numbers. Right now, more than 30 knights were following him. 12 of these knights were from Osfair's family while the rest came from Vedredo family. He could differentiate them because of the difference in armor design and the crest. Suddenly, Soda stopped moving and he just stood straight in one of the rooftops of the houses in this area. There were still those ignorant people that were watching the knights and Soda from the sideline. Soda looked down at the knights and said, "Let's stop playing tags. From now on, let's fight seriously." Several shadows emerged from the ground and it flew towards the direction of the knights at high speed. Swoosh. 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 The knights knew this spell, so they easily repelled the shadows, but none of them managed to cut it in half. Soda then stomped his feet on the roof and casted Shadow Spike. The spike burst out of the roof and it continued to spread until it reached the position of the knights. Jump! One of the knights shouted while looking at the spikes that were rising up from the ground. The knights didn't have a choice but to jump in the air to avoid the spikes on the ground. Suddenly, they saw Soda in front of them in the midair. What? They were surprised to see him appeared in front of them in an instant. Vedredo family? I will annihilate you. The corner of Soda's mouth stretched out into a smirk. He grabbed his sword and used the Crimson Moon skill. Swoosh. The 3 knights from Vedredo family were sliced in half. They were the ones closest to Soda, so they couldn't react in time when Soda activated his skill. The knights on the back barely blocked his attack. They received wounds on their bodies as they couldn't completely block that attack. These knights were just normal knights. They didn't have enough power to compete to the C-rank adventurers. Soda and the knights landed on the ground. He cancelled his spell as he didn't want to waste any more mana. Although he has mana potions in his pocket, he still wanted to save it for the upcoming battles with the elite knights. Soda looked at the knights and said, "Come, I will take all of you." The knights looked at Soda and they raised their sharp swords. They were wary of him as they saw him killed 3 knights easily. "If you're not going to come then I will," Soda said as he charged towards the nearest knight on his left side. Swoosh. In just a second, he appeared in front of the Vedredo family knight. The knight was slightly surprised at this, but he quickly regained his composure and slashed his sword towards Soda. Soda shifted his body sideways and the sword passed beside him before he grabbed the wrist of the knight. He then stabbed the Vajra sword in the knight's chest. "I'm sorry, if you want to blame someone then blame that lord of yours for trying to kill Yuko," Soda said before he waved his sword and the knight was sliced into 2. "Ah!" Soda heard a shouted behind him. He quickly turned his head and saw 3 knights charged at him in unison. He looked at the crest and the chest part of their armor and saw that they were from the Osphairs family. Cat speed, and triple muscle strengthening. Soda activated the combat arts that could temporarily increase his power and speed. The 3 knights arrived in front of him and immediately slashed their swords. Swoosh. 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 Soda simply blocked all of their attacks with his sword. He moved swiftly as he appeared behind the 3 knights and threw a powerful punch in the face of one of the knights. He then lifted up his feet and swept them all using his feet. Bang. 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 The 3 knights flew and crashed on the ground. Soda chased after them as he wouldn't give them a chance to recover. He knocked them out one by one using his fist. He wouldn't kill the people from Lumalia's family, only have one target this time. It was to decrease the force of the Vedredo family by killing all the knights that they sent after him. "Let's see, if you're going to make a move after I kill all of your subordinates," Soda muttered with a smirk on his face while looking at the rest of the knights around him. Soda swept his eyes at the remaining knights around him. He counted their numbers and found that the number of knights was 23. 15 of them came from the Vedredo family while the rest were from Osphairs family. The civilian already left this area when the battle between Soda and the knights started a few minutes ago, so right now they were the only people in this place except for the few ones that choose to stay. Soda guessed that the one that stayed here have some power to protect themselves. They have the confidence to do that, that's why they choose to stay in this place. He clenched his fingers around the handle of his sword and he slightly bent his knees. Soda was about to charge towards the knights of the Vedredo family when an oppressive aura hit him. Boom. They finally arrived. Soda muttered as he turned his head and saw 2 groups of knights. They were the elite knights of Vedredo and Osphairs family. They were emitting a powerful aura that could rival his own. It's legit. They really are powerful to the point that each one of them could rival my own. Soda smiled while looking at these newly arrived knights. The elite knights of Osphairs family had 5 people in their group while the Vedredo family have 7 members. This number is sufficient to take me down, but the Gale group will arrive here soon. I just have to hold on for a few minutes. Soda thought while observing the elite knights. It's quite lucky that they didn't send out more of them. The 2 families only sent out 1 squad. But they wouldn't be able to take me down easily. Soda smirked as he circulated his mana around his body and he tightly gripped the Vajra sword in his hand. There's no need to hold back. Soda casted agility boost and strength boost on himself. He then stomped his feet on the ground and several tentacle-like shadows emerged. Swoosh. 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 The knights quickly pulled their sword and tried to cut down the shadows, but they didn't manage to. The shadows were tougher than they imagined. They didn't think that they couldn't cut those shadows. After finding out that they couldn't cut the shadows, the knights quickly moved their bodies and jumped away. Quickly restrain him. One of the elite knights of the Osphairs family shouted. 2 of his comrades used their combat arts that could increase their power and speed. Swoosh. In an instant, the 2 of them appeared in front of Soda. Both of them slashed their swords at him. Soda stepped back and raised his sword to block their attacks. Clang. Clang. Soda was pushed back as he felt the power from that attacks. Then, the Vajra sword emitted a red aura. Without wasting any seconds, Soda used the Crimson Moon skill. The 2 knights already anticipated it when they saw the red aura around the sword, so they managed to avoid the skill. Swoosh. Suddenly, black spikes emerged from the ground. It was about to pierce the body of the 2 knights when the spike broke into tiny particles. What? Soda was surprised when he saw this. He jumped backward to gain some distance and he looked around. He saw one of the knights and was casted a spell. Light barrier. The knight muttered while looking at Soda. The shadow attribute spell was weak to light and holy attribute spells, so a level 1, shadow spike, broke immediately when it made contact with a light barrier. Really, the difficulty increased when a knight that could use light attribute spell appeared. Soda thought while glancing at the knight that could use light attribute spell. It seems that he needed to prioritize eliminating this knight, but the problem was that this knight came from the Osphera's family, so he couldn't kill him. Soda squinted his eyes and glanced at the elite knights of the Vedredo family. These knights were just watching him and the knights from Osphera's family. He wondered why they didn't attack him up until now. Just what are they planning? Soda thought. The group of elite knights that Osphera's family sent has 5 members. The 2 knights were 10 meters away from Soda while the remaining 3 were in the back. One of the knights in the back stepped forward and asked, "Where's young Miss Lumilia? Where did you hide her?" The knight frowned when he saw that Soda just glanced at him and remained silent. "Do you know that it's a crime to kidnap a daughter of a noble?" The knight said in a loud voice. Soda smiled when he heard the words of the knight. He said, "So you're saying that it's fine if it's not a noble?" "I didn't say it." The knight gritted his teeth. "Fine, but you know that I'm just following the order of your young miss," Soda said, and he opened his arms. "You know, I'm an adventurer and I will always follow what the quest that I've taken, and right now your young miss wanted to leave this city." Soda recalled something, so he added, "But I'm not an assassin that will do everything for money. Money couldn't make me move, but it's a different matter when we're talking about skill points." Soda thought. "So you're saying..." The knight seemed to know what Soda was about to say. "Yeah, she doesn't want to be tied by her family. She has her own life. Why must you people force her to marry someone she doesn't like?" Soda slowly said to the knight. He then shrugged his shoulder and added, "So my job right now is to let her escape from this city, even if it means going against the whole Osphera's family?" The knight did while looking straight into Soda's eyes. "Who cares about that? I'm just doing my job, that's all." Soda answered back as he opened his palm as if feeling helpless. "Then, how about we pay you triple than the money that young miss paid?" The knights gave him an offer. "I'm sorry, but I'm still in the middle of my job. We will talk later after I completed this job," Soda said as he smiled. "There's no point in talking to him. My squad will handle this, so stay out of it." Suddenly, an elite knight from the Vedredo family said. The elite knight of the Osphera's family looked at the one from Vedredo family and nodded. "I'll leave it in your group." He then looked at one of his comrades and said, "Ray, go back to our lord and report what this adventurer said." "Understood." The knight nodded and he quickly left the area. The elite knights of the Osphera's family stepped back, and currently, they didn't have a plan to attack him. Soda glanced at them and knew that they were going to wait for the order of Lumilia's father. Since they knew that Lumilia left on her own, they knew that they should report it to their lord. They don't have any idea that Lumilia's father already knew what's happening here. He just wanted to know why her daughter chose to leave the mansion. "Right now, I don't need to worry about them. I need to take care of these knights from Vedredo family." Soda thought as he shifted his gaze to the elite knights of the Vedredo family. One of the elite knights of the Vedredo family stepped forward and pulled out his sword. He said, "You know our lord forbids us from killing you, but our lord also said that we have to make sure to break the bones from your limbs. Why don't you try it and see if you can really do it?" Soda smirked and he casted Shadow Bind without hesitation. Several shadows emerged from the ground and it quickly chased after the elite knights from the Vedredo family. The sword of the knight before emitted a blue light. The knight slashed it towards the tentacles like shadows. 6-fold slash. He used a combat arts and managed to repel all the shadows that were coming towards him and his comrades. The knights from the Osphera's family were shocked when they saw this. They focused on the knight's face and recognized him. That's Madan. Madan was one of Gregory's direct subordinate. He was stronger than elite knights as his power was just a bit weaker than B-rank adventurers. To think that Lord Gregory would even send out one of his direct subordinates. The knights from the Osphera's family were stunned and didn't know why Gregory sent Madan out here. The difficulty once again became harder. "Well, that doesn't matter to me as your power is still in the realm of C rank," Soda said with a smirk, and he continued to cast spells. Shadow Bind. Even though Madan was powerful, he still couldn't cut the shadows of the level 10, Shadow Bind, spell. Only those who entered the realm of B rank or monster that formed monster orb could break this spell. The best he could do was to fend it off using brute force or counter it using light attribute spells. Soda jumped backward as the 2 knights from the Vedredo family chased after him. He casted Shadow Spike, but they just smashed it with their swords. Really, he couldn't use a tier 1 level 1 spell against this kind of opponent. Also, it could hardly damage the elite knights. The 2 knights arrived in front of Soda and slashed their swords at him. Soda quickly moved his body and barely avoided their attacks before he waved his sword at them. Crimson Moon. The 2 knights stopped to block Soda's skill, and Soda took this chance to gain some distance away from them while casting the Shadow Bind spell. The tentacles like shadows flashed as it went towards the other 5 knights of the Vedredo family. Of course, Soda didn't forget to send some of the shadows to the 2 knights that blocked his attack. Swoosh. Swoosh. The knights scattered in the area as the shadows chased after them. They knew that they couldn't cut these shadows with their own strength. But Soda found one knight heading toward him at high speed. This knight was Madan, one of the direct subordinates of Gregory. He had short blonde hair and blue eyes. He had sharp features that could be considered handsome in the human race. Soda gripped his sword tightly and he slashed it in front of him when Madan appeared. Clang! Madan reacted quickly by raising his sword to block Soda's sword. He already anticipated that Soda will slash in front when he appeared. But what happened next was something he didn't expect. What? His feet suddenly sunk into the ground. He glanced down and found that the concrete floor before turned into a pool of mud. Mud slide. Didn't expect it, right? Soda grinned as he used his free hand to deliver a powerful blow on Madan's stomach. He then grabbed Madan's arm, which was holding a sword, before Soda slashed his Vajra sword. Swoosh! A large cut appeared on Madan's chest and a huge amount of blood spurted out of it. His purple-grade armor couldn't do anything against the dark-grade sword of Soda. Actually, Soda was going to cut his neck off, but he changed the trajectory of his sword because he saw a 3-layered barrier that appeared on it. A small barrier like that was hard to break. The caster made it smaller because they wanted to clearly avoid being cut in that place, because if they made the barrier covered Madan's whole body, then the Vajra sword would simply shatter it like a piece of fragile glass. They sacrificed the other place so that Soda couldn't kill Madan in an instant. What a smart move if Soda was to say it. The barrier must be the work of the other elite knights. Soda was about to stab Madan in the chest when Madan headbutted him. Bang! Soda staggered backward while slashing his sword, but it was blocked by a barrier. The other knights controlled the barrier. Shit! Soda cursed as he used Cross Moon. The red light flashed from the sword and the barrier expanded to block it, but it didn't last a second before it broke into tiny particles. But a second was enough for Madan to get out of the pool of mud. Madam distanced himself and looked at his broken left hand. Even though he jumped away, Soda still managed to get his left arm. He took a deep breath as he felt intense pain in his body. He looked at Soda and asked, "How?" He wasn't expecting to get an answer from his question. It's just that he wanted to shift his attention out of the pain he was feeling right now. His purple-grade armor was of no use when it comes to defense against Soda's sword. There's only one explanation to this, and that was Soda's sword was higher grade. There's no way that Soda's strength was higher than him because, from the earlier clash, it gave him a bit of understanding of Soda's strength. With various buffs, Soda's strength was only a bit lower than him. He circulated his mana and found that it became hard to control. He opened his eyes widely and looked at Soda. That skill before can corrupt the target's mana pool. Madan muttered as he recalled how that skill got his arm. If he knew about this earlier, then he could have dispersed that red light when it seeped into his arm using his mana. Soda took a deep breath and casted Shadow Bind. He held his forehead and felt that it was bleeding. After all, Madan poured his mana on his forehead when he headbutted Soda before. Soda exhaled and he observed the knights of the Vedredo family. He didn't manage to kill Madan, the strongest one among them, so he knew that they would be wary about the mudslide spell. That was careless on my part, Soda thought. Luckily, they still didn't know about the Shadow Ball spell, so he would only use it when he got another opportunity to kill Madan. Madan looked at his comrades and said, "Be careful when you got close to him. He had a spell that could turn the concrete floor into a mud." "Yes, sir." The knights answered him in a loud voice. It's really a problem when you don't know your opponent's skill. Be wary, maybe he still have a skill that he haven't used, Madan said to his comrades. He thought that Soda was just an ordinary C-rank adventurer, that's why he got careless and thought that they would be able to take him down easily, but he was wrong. Knight's Will, Madan muttered as his body exerted a white aura around him. This skill could increase his attack damage and speed. Sword Aura, the sword in Madan's hand was coated by bluish energy. This sword skill could increase the sharpness of his sword. Also, his attack damage. Lastly, Strength Reinforcement, Madan said as he activated all the combat arts that could increase his strength. His power right now was a little bit lower than those B rank. The skill that Soda used before was problematic to a mage who used their mana in the battle, as it could disrupt the flow of mana inside a person's body. Luckily, he was a knight, not a mage. Among the 50 direct subordinates of Gregory, he was one of the weakest, because his strength was below B rank. He only became a direct subordinate of Gregory because he had the potential to reach that level of strength. "Let's do this," Madan shouted as he dashed towards Soda. Soda knitted his brows and controlled the tentacles like shadows to distract the other knights. He doesn't want them to bother him in battling Madan because it would become a trouble if they ganged him up. He then charged towards Madan. Clang! 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 Soda and Madan exchanged blows at high speed. Every time their swords collided, a spark flew out between their swords as a loud metallic sound rung in the whole area. Clang! 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 Every second, small cuts started to appear around Soda's body. He knew that in terms of overall abilities, the knight in front of him was higher than him. He couldn't do anything but defend against Madan's barrage of attacks. Even defending was hard for him as some slipped in his guard and cut his body. Sota even tried to use the same tactic once again, but Madan already knew it, so it didn't work. Madan avoided all the mud that he created on the ground. Swoosh. Swoosh. Sota opened his eyes widely as another 2 knights appeared on his left and right side. Since he focused on trying to fight Madan, he could hardly have a time to control the tentacles like shadows to distract the other knights. So it's not surprising that they managed to get past from his shadows. Ursus frowned when he heard the report of his subordinates. I know that my daughter left the mansion on her own, but I didn't think that it's because of the engagement. Ursus muttered as he tapped his finger on top of the table. If we annul the engagement, then Gregory would face us. I know his temperament, as he wouldn't tolerate it if my daughter is the one who broke the engagement. He valued their family face after all. But what if Gregory's son is the one who annulled the engagement? Ursus shook his head and thought that was impossible. Gregory wanted to take some of the crystal flame honey, so he wouldn't let his son cancel the engagement. I don't want to make another enemy, so I'm going to personally visit my daughter and have a talk with her, Ursus said as he stood up from his seat. Suddenly, the door opened and his assistant came in. My lord, the captain of the city guard is here. He wanted to talk to you about the happenings in the city. Roar. A loud roar echoed in the whole area that shook the ground. It startled every knight, including those knights that were about to attack Sota. Madan looked at his 2 comrades that stopped and he shouted, "Don't be distracted in front of an enemy." The 2 knights regained their composure. They bent their knees and took a distance away. But they were already too late. 2 large cuts appeared on their chest. It spurted out a large amount of blood before the tentacles like shadows emerged on their feet and strangled their bodies. Sota smiled as he knew that Yuko arrived to help him in this situation. With Yuko's help, he would be able to last longer and killed some of the knights of the Vedredo family. Also, the Gale group would arrive soon, so he doesn't need to worry unless there's an unexpected thing that will appear to help the knights. Die. Sota looked at the 2 knights and closed his palm. The tentacles like shadows that were restraining them tightened. Arg! The 2 knights groaned in pain as the shadows around them tightened, threatening to crush their bodies. Free them. Madan immediately moved his body and rushed towards Sota to save his 2 comrades. He jumped in the air and slashed his sword. 6-fold slash. 6 flashes of light went towards Sota at high speed. Sota looked at it and squinted his eyes. He raised his palm and several tentacles like shadows appeared. He controlled these shadows and it blocked Madan's skill. Boom. Madan continued to push forward the shadows that were blocking his way. His power was really great and it almost reached the realm of Brank. Sota frowned and his shadows tightened up around the 2 knights. He gripped his sword as he prepared himself to clash against Madan once he passed through the shadows. It was hard to kill the elite knights than the ordinary knights that he killed before. Their body was tougher and their strength was higher, so it was hard to crush them using Shadow Bind spell, which was a spell for binding opponents. If he was a rank 3 mage, then his Shadow Bind spell would have enough to easily crush these elite knights. Sota saw the other 4 knights of the Vedredo family dashed forward to help their 2 comrades. Yuko, Sota shouted, and Yuko charged towards the 4 elite knights. He knew that Yuko couldn't match that 4 elite knights on her own. At the very least, she would last 2 minutes from the 4 elite knights, and that's if she used every strength she had. Roar. Yuko roared loudly and she used her trait skill. She opened her mouth widely and a ball of flames formed. It spun like a razor before it expanded. Burning Shout. She used the trait skill that she gained as a red fur bear. It was a powerful attack and a no skill. The flames spread wide enough to the point that the 4 elite knights have no choice but to face her skill. They couldn't avoid the flames because of its wide range. 2 of the 4 elite knights turned around. They used combat arts to increase their defense before placing a barrier in front of them. They used combat arts because even if the barrier collapsed, they still have protection around them. They were going to defend against Yuko's trait skill while the other 2 knights will rescue their comrades. The flames hit the barrier they erected and they endured it for their comrades. Sota opened his left palm and a black ball formed on top of it. He then cancelled the Shadow Bind that was holding Madan. Madan was surprised when the tentacles like shadows suddenly vanished into thin air, but he quickly regained his composure as he saw Sota through a black ball of energy in front of him. He reacted quickly by shifting his head to the side and the black ball of energy passed beside his head. Swoosh. As expected of him, he still managed to avoid it in that range. Sota thought, and he waved his sword towards Madan. Madan also swung his sword and both of their swords collided, causing sparks to flew between their swords. Clang. Sota and Madan pulled back their swords before they clashed once again. Clang. 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 They were so fast that every time they swung their swords it was followed by a gust of wind. Just like last time, Madan suppressed Sota in sword fights. Sota's sword mastery was level 3 and Madan was suppressing him. It means that he was higher than Sota in terms of pure sword skills. It's just that Sota has an advantage in basic attacks like this. The added damage of his sword mastery skill stacked up with his corruption traits. That's why he could damage Madan even with normal attacks. Plus, the sharpness of the Vajra sword Saya was higher than any sword. If not for all of this, Sota wouldn't be able to hurt someone at Madan's level, who was clearly above him, with his normal attacks. Every second, small cut appeared on Sota's body. The blue-grade leather armor that he was wearing was tattered. Sir Madan, we've managed to rescue them. The two knights shouted as they managed to rescue the knights from the tentacles like shadows. Good, Madan muttered as he smiled and slashed his sword at Sota. Good. Sota also smiled at Madan as the sword an inch closer to his face. But something unexpected happened. His sword slashed the thin air as Sota vanished in front of him. What the? Madan was stunned. He recalled Sota's smile. Teleportation spell, but he was looking at him when he vanished. Madan thought as he tried to figure out how did Sota vanished. A tier 1 teleportation spell called Blink was a spell that could teleport the user to a dozen meters away from his position. Also, he could only teleport to the place that he was looking at. But Sota was looking straight at Madan's eye, so it was impossible to use Blink. It only means that Sota used different teleportation spells. Madan recalled the black ball of energy that Sota threw before. Damn. Then, he's targeting my subordinates. Madan thought as he gritted his teeth and he turned around. Ugh. He felt a warm feeling forming in his mouth. He looked down and saw Sota's sword on his chest. Arg. Madan groaned and spat a mouthful of blood. He looked up and saw Sota was grabbing two of his comrades in their neck. Slowly, the tentacles like shadows rose up from the ground. It slowly strangled the bodies of the two knights. Let them go, Madan said as blood flowed down from his mouth. He then raised his hand and grabbed the sword that was on his chest. He was about to pull it out when he felt something. Thud. Thud. He fell on his knees as he felt his heart thump wildly. The world he was seeing was slowly turning around and his whole body was slowly going numb. What's happening to me? Madan said with great effort. The temperature of his body was rising and then it will go down. He gritted his teeth and lifted up his head. He looked at Sota with clear anger in his eyes. Suddenly, his vision turned completely red like a blood. He felt intense pain coming from his eyes and it followed up by blood flowing out of it. Arg! Madan screamed as he held his head using both of his hands. He then heard a female voice whispering beside him. Give your body to me and you will not feel any of this pain. I assure you in my name that you will no longer feel pain once you entrust your body to me. Get the hell out of my head. Madan screamed as he continued to hear the voice of a woman in his head. Sota turned around when he heard Madan's loud voice. So that how it is? A smile appeared on Sota's face while looking at Madan. He then closed his palm and the shadows tightened around the bodies of the two knights behind him. Crack. A loud cracking sound echoed behind him. The shadows crushed all the bones of the two knights and killed them. Sota ignored it as he walked towards Madan. You know, there's a crazy will inside that sword so you shouldn't have hold it, Sota said before he grabbed the handle of the Vajra sword Saya and pulled it out. He looked at the sword and said, you've unconsciously activated the possession skill when you hold it, or maybe the will inside the sword help you. Just what are you planning, Saya? Suddenly, a voice rung inside Sota's mind. Ufufu, I'm just helping you defeat him. I don't have any plans or agendas. Sota didn't expect that the Vajra sword Saya would reply to his words. It was truly unexpected that it caught him off guard. I'll worry about you later. He shook his head and looked at Madan who was breathing heavily.